Setting can be used to study race and racism in a story. One book that you can use to study the complexity of setting from these angles is Nella Larson's Passing. While setting is a very concrete thing, right? It's like the place and time of a story. There's also other very creative ways that we could be looking at setting in a story. But before I show you, I have some questions that I want you to consider. How do social issues play a role in the setting of this story? For example, how does race show up through setting? How are characters and their identities, racialized identities, impacted by the setting? So in this book, we can look at setting in three important ways. First and foremost, we have to consider what was the racial context of the 20s when this book was published that created the conditions for people to feel like racial passing was a good way for them to improve their quality of life. Two, you can't ignore that they're in New York. The setting is in New York. So what is the difference between setting this book in Harlem versus a town in Mississippi or in Texas? And third and more complex is to reimagine setting in a more abstract and metaphorical way. Spaces can be white spaces, black spaces, indigenous spaces, Asian spaces, even if they are not labeled as such or painted as such. And so the question becomes, how did the white spaces and the black spaces of that book, because of racial segregation, impact plot, impact the development of characterization, move the plot forward, cause conflict, or were used for conflict?